Ok, hola, estamos aquí en capítulo 7 todavía, 7.1, and we're going to talk about reflexive verbs. You guys, this is so awesome. This is going to so expand and build on everything you've been learning for the last 14 weeks. So dig in. We talked last week in vocabulary about some of the verbs that are reflexive verbs, and now we're going to talk about what to do with those things, okay? The whole concept of reflexive verbs is that the subject of the action is doing this verb to him or herself. So the action is reflecting back on me. You look at some of the verbs like lavarse. So lavar means to wash. Lavarse means to wash oneself. So if I wash my face, I am acting on myself. I am both the subject as well as recipient of the acting. So it's reflecting back on me. I think it's amazing. And we do this in English. Anytime you hear self, that's in the English concept of so I got myself up this morning, I made myself breakfast. That's how we indicate it in English. I washed my face, right? So I washed, and then my face, that pronoun my, indicates that I received the action as well. So it's the same thing. In Spanish, it's just more formalized. Reflexive verbs and always use reflexive pronouns. The example we have, Joaquín se ducha por la mañana. Okay, so ducharse is that reflexive verb that means to shower oneself or to take a shower. And so here we see that Juan is the subject, and he's also receiving the action of the verb duchar. Okay, so here's how it works. The verb is lavarse. So there's one verb that's lavar, which means to wash, and another verb that is lavarse, which means to wash oneself. Each part of that gets conjugated. We have the pronoun part. Interestingly enough, when you have the infinitive, lavarse, remember the rules of where we place pronouns. They go on the end of an infinitive, right? So lavarse is that infinitive. And then when we conjugate it, now it's going to be a conjugated verb. So that pronoun is now going to come before the conjugated verb. So that's how this works out. So we have yo, that's the subject pronoun. Me lavo. Me is a reflexive pronoun, and lavo is a conjugated verb. Yo me lavo. Tú te lavas. Usted, él, ella se lava. Nosotros, nosotras nos lavamos. Vosotros, vosotras os laváis. And ustedes, ellos, ellas se lavan. Now, just think for just a second. You're getting off easy because if you realize that me, te, nos, and os are the same, whether this was an indirect object, a direct object, or now a reflexive pronoun. It's the same in those forms. The one that changes are the third person singular and plural. For direct objects, we had lo and la, los and las. For indirect objects, we had le and les. And now for reflexive verbs, we have se, which is the same for both singular and plural. And se just means that it comes back onto itself, okay? So we're conjugating the verb, and then for my way of thinking, we're also conjugating the pronoun. And here what we have. So lavarse gets divided into two parts. The lavar part just gets conjugated like the regular verb. So in this case, I chose the present tense. Yo lavo, tú lavas, ustedes, ella lava, nosotros lavamos, vosotros laváis, ustedes, ellos, ellas lavan. The se part gets conjugated down to me, te, se, nos, os, and se. Now you have to remember I put the little arrow to flip because once it's a conjugated verb, we're flipping the position, and now we put it in front. So we have yo me lavo, tú te lavas, usted, él, ella se lava, nosotros nos lavamos, vosotros os laváis, and ustedes, ellos, ellas se lavan. And again, remember that this means that all these subjects did this to themselves, okay? That's what makes it reflexive. The placement, like we just talked about, is the same thing, goes after and attached to an infinitive, so lavarse, and then it goes before a conjugated verb or after the infinitive or the present participle. So, ella se va a lavar, or ella va a lavarse, ella se está lavando, or ella está lavándose. And remember, when it goes on to the participle, that ing form, then you have to add the accent because now we've added an extra syllable. So that accent makes it be pronounced appropriately. So attached to the infinitive, attached to the participle, or before a conjugated verb, never in between the two verbs, right? You would never say, ella está se lavando. You would never say, ella va a se lavar. Always before the conjugated verb, or after and attached to the infinitive or the participle. And again, it implies, in this case, she is washing her face. She's washing herself. So she's doing that. She is doing and receiving the action. Okay, when a reflexive verb is conjugated, the reflexive pronoun agrees with the subject. Me afeito, I shave myself. Tú te despiertas a las 7. You wake up yourself at 7 o'clock. Some examples from our friend Marisa. ¿Te importa si me maquillo primero? Does it matter to you if I make up myself first? So there's an example. The te importa is a direct object. Does it matter to you? Is it Miranda? I can't remember her name. Miranda. If I make up myself first. And then he says, a las chicas les encanta. So girls like, to the girls, they like to maquillarse durante horas y horas. They like to take hours and hours to put on their makeup. Not sure that's a non-sexist statement there. But so there's a couple things. The les in this one is the indirect object because the verb encanta, the subject of that sentence is now maquillarse. So it gets a little bit complicated, but the maquillarse has a say because we're talking about third person plural, las chicas, right? So that's a verb that reflects back on itself, is the maquillarse, not the encanta, that receives and has objects associated with it. Okay, so we talked to the last lesson 7.0, we talked about some of the verbs that use the reflexive, and here's a whole list of other ones. And I'm not going to go through these all with you, but let me show you a couple things that I think are pretty exciting. Each of these verbs with the reflexive ending shows that it goes back on itself. So acordarse, acordar means to remind. Acordarse means you're reminding yourself. And if you think about it, we say it in English. I'm reminded of a time, right? So we're reminding ourselves, we're remembering. Acostarse, that's them changing as well, to go to bed. Afeitarse, bañarse, cepillarse. In 7.0, on the last slide presentation, we had cepillarse el pelo and cepillarse los dientes. The verb is the same, it's just what the object is that's being brushed is different. Despedirse, despertarse, dormirse. So dormir means to sleep. Dormirse means to go to sleep or to fall asleep. So you are making yourself sleep. That's why that's reflexive. Duchar, to shower, ducharse, to take a shower, because now you're doing it to yourself. You can shower your dogs, you can shower your kids, but when you're ducharse yourself, now it's reflexive. Enojar. Enojar means to anger. And so you can make your spouse or your roommate or your brother angry, but you can also get angry. And that means you've made yourself angry at something. Ir means to go. Irse means to get up and you get out of here, you leave, you go away. So not just to go, but to get up and go away. Lavar, lavarse, levantar. Levantar just means to pick something up. I pick up, yo levanto esta pluma. I pick up this pen. But me levanto means I get myself up. I pick myself up out of this chair. Now, llamarse. Now, hopefully it all makes sense. Yo me llamo. I call myself, or I am called. I am named. Yo me llamo. So it's yo, and it has the me. That's a reflexive verb. We talked about the other ones. Maquillarse, peinarse, ponerse. Ponerse enojado means I became angry. Me pongo triste. I get sad when. I make myself sad when this happens. Preocuparse, to worry about something. Probarse, to try on, close. Probar means to try. Probarse means to try on yourself something. Quedar means to remain. Quedarse means to stay where you are, or someone stays where he or she is. Quitar means to take off. Quitarse la ropa. Me quito la camisa, I take off my shirt. So I'm doing it to myself. Secar, to dry, secarse, to dry yourself. Sentar, you can sit something down, but when you sentarse, you're sitting yourself down. And then sentirse, to feel, vestirse, to get dressed. So these verbs are very common reflexive, and you already know how to use these. You can conjugate these. Just remember you conjugate the verb and you conjugate the pronoun to indicate the reflexive nature of it. Okay, let's look at a couple things real quick. Lola lava los platos. She washes the plate. She is the one performing the action on the plates, right? So she is doing it to something else, to a third party. Lola se lava la cara. Really what you're saying is Lola washes herself the face. And notice that when we use these kind of verbs, it doesn't say su cara, because the se has already told us that it's for herself. And so it would be redundant and incorrect to put a possessive pronoun in there. So we don't say Lola se lava la cara. We say Lola se lava, she washes herself the face. Lola se lava las manos. Lola se lava el pelo. All those things that say is already telling us that they're her things. So we do not use a possessive pronoun when we go with that. Okay? Hopefully that's understandable. Okay, so let's look at a couple of things here. Let's look at 4 examples. I want you to write these sentences. Some of them you can write a couple different ways, and you'll notice what that means. So remember that the se, when it says ducharse, that doesn't mean you're going to keep the se there. That means if you need to, you're going to change the se. And in this case, they're all yos, and so that already tells you you've got to change the se. So don't think you have to keep the se in there. That's just indicating it's a reflexive verb, and then change it accordingly. So pause, write down 4 sentences, or if you think about it, write down. There will be 2 and 3 have 2 different options. You can see that because there are 2 verbs. So go and write some options and then come back, unpause, and we'll take a look at it. Okay, número 1, yo ducharse por la mañana. We're going to conjugate duchar, we're going to conjugate the se, and we have yo me ducho por la mañana. I take a shower in the morning. I shower myself in the mornings. Número 2, yo ir a ducharse por la mañana. Now we're going to have 2 verbs here, one conjugated, one infinitive. Yo voy a ducharme, so attached to the infinitive, or yo me voy a duchar before the conjugated verb. Número 3, yo estar ducharse por la mañana. Same thing, we have 2 verbs. Yo me estoy duchando por la mañana, so before the conjugated verb, yo estoy duchándome por la mañana, attached to the participle with the accent that shows it's pronounced accordingly. Número 4, yo ducharse a mi hijo. Now think about this one for a second. This is a tricky one because in this case, the se is irrelevant, right? Because I'm the subject, but I'm not showering myself, I'm showering my son. And so that would be incorrect. If you needed a pronoun in there, it would be a direct object pronoun. Yo le ducho a mi hijo por la mañana. I'm showering my son because now he's receiving the action. So it's a direct object. Okay, so you'll see this on quizzes and on exams. So hopefully you understand that the se part just indicates that whole infinitive is a reflexive verb, and then you need to change all the parts that are involved in that sentence. Okay, that's it. Reflexive pronouns, reflexive verbs, you will use these a lot, and it'll be good for you to understand how, and for you to understand what somebody's saying when they use them. So let me know what questions you have, read through it, and I think you'll get this. We've learned how to place the pronouns, you understand what pronouns are, and this will amplify your ability to speak and to learn. So good job all. Talk soon. Bye.